According to the Alzheimer's Disease International Report 2015, almost 47 million people live with some form of dementia worldwide, and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that unlike deaths from heart disease, which are going down, those from Alzheimer's are actually increasing. Dementia is largely underreported, so Alzheimer's rates are likely to be higher than documented. My guest on the show today is Dr. Olubunmi Omojuwulo. He's a consultant neurologist at General Hospital, Marina. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So dementia is a sort of disease that is characterized by loss of memory, reasoning skills, and like. Yeah. So is this exactly the same for Alzheimer's?
Yeah, thank you very much. Dementia is not a disease, but it's just an entity that describes various forms of disease that have similarities. Okay. So Alzheimer is a form of dementia, is a cause of dementia.
But Alzheimer is a disease.
Is a disease. So there are different causes of dementia, of which Alzheimer is the most common cause of dementia.
What causes Alzheimer's?
Okay, thank you very much. A lot of work has been done concerning Alzheimer, but the trigger, what actually causes it, is still not known. However, over the past decades, a lot of research has gone into this Alzheimer's disease. Right from the early 1900s, when Alzheimer actually described this disease, it has been found that the major problem in Alzheimer is deposition of some abnormal proteins in certain areas of the brain. So you know the brain is made up of neurons, billions of neurons. So we have some proteins that are abnormally deposited inside the neuron that break the transmission of electrical signals, and also some that are deposited around the connection of one neuron to the other. So when these abnormal proteins are deposited, it leads to malfunctioning of the neuron, then ultimately death of the neurons. So, and one of the things is that Alzheimer's, usually the abnormal deposition usually starts from the area of the brain that has to do mainly with memory. Okay. Which is the temporal lobe, hippocampus, that side of the brain has to do with memory.
So memory would be one of the, loss of memory would be one of the first signs of Alzheimer's.
Exactly. So that is why most patients with Alzheimer usually manifest first with memory problems.
Are there any other early signs of Alzheimer's?
Yes, there are. Apart from memory, there are also other early signs of Alzheimer, like the inability to recognize objects or to name objects, then
familiar objects.
Yes, familiar objects, and even faces. Inability to recognize faces, inability to name objects, and patient may become patient may have difficulty paying attention, lack of attention into details and all those things. So those are early signs. But as the disease progresses, we now have more problems arising, because as the plaque spread to other parts of the brain. So because Alzheimer has to do with problem with cognition and behavior. So those are the two main issues. Cognition, there are different aspects of cognition. Memory, which is the first thing that is usually affected. So patients will forget things, especially short-term memory. So
and all this because of messages which are disrupted in neurons.
In neurons, exactly. So the memory, then patient will have problem with language, may have problem with language, both spoken and written language. Then executive
when you say
function,
problems with language, does it mean that they won't be able to talk, or they talk and they don't make sense?
Yes, not that they won't be able to talk at all, but you see, they will have difficulty talking or understanding what you are saying. So because language has to do, it's not just about talking, it's also about understanding, comprehending what somebody is saying. So they have problem with that. They have problem with executive functioning, abstract thinking, calculation, all sorts of things can happen. And
who is at risk for this disease?
Yes, thank you very much. The risk factor for Alzheimer really is one of the strongest risk factors is age. Because most of the people who have this disease are those who are older than 60, 65 and above. Those are people that usually have the disease. And from the age of 65 and above, the incidence and the prevalence increases. Then we now talk about also family history.
Ah, it's hereditary.
Yes, it has some hereditary component. Most of the cases of Alzheimer are sporadic. They are not hereditary. But there are some that are hereditary. So if somebody has a relation, a close relation, first degree relation that has Alzheimer, the risk of having is higher. Then we have some genetic component to it too.
First degree, does that mean brother, sister, or son, daughter?
Yes, brother, sister, son, daughter, parents.
Okay.
Yes. So then we have genetics. Now, genetics, there are some genes. When they are mutated in the body, it predisposes to risk of developing Alzheimer's. Now, we have what we call early onset Alzheimer and late onset Alzheimer. For people who have mutation in some genes, majorly three of them has been known: presenilin 1, 2, and then amyloid, and then the amyloid protein. So now, those ones, if somebody inherits abnormal, there's a mutation, it can lead to early onset Alzheimer. Then we have another protein in the body that metabolizes lipid and other things, called apolipoprotein. So this apolipoprotein, if somebody inherits, if somebody has the E4 type, there are different types. If somebody has the E4 type, is the risk of having Alzheimer is higher. Then there are also risk factors: hypertension, obesity, head injuries, so many other risk factors that can predispose to Alzheimer.
Is it possible to be able to predict by examination who might get Alzheimer's in the future?
Yes, you cannot predict by examination, but you can. When you talk about examination, now the examination we are talking about now is employing some neuropsychological testing tools. So there are some tools which is in form of questionnaires and pictures and all those things that you can use to quickly identify or make early diagnosis of Alzheimer. The only way you can predict maybe somebody will likely have Alzheimer is to do genetic testing to now see whether this patient has a gene, defective gene that will predispose the patient to Alzheimer. Or if the patient has family history, then you might now want to go and do those tests. But it's not everybody you will do testing for.
So he's predisposed, but does that mean that the person will actually eventually get it?
No. Predisposition doesn't mean the person will eventually get it. It's a combination of many things, both gene, environment, everything combined together. So somebody that even have the gene may not eventually have Alzheimer. It's just that the risk is higher.
But would you call it a normal progression? Normal, occurrence?
Well, it is very important. This question is very, very important. Alzheimer is not a normal aging process. That is what we should get. Now, even though as somebody grows old, some of these abnormal proteins are also deposited, but the quantity is not as much as that in Alzheimer. So that is why you see as somebody grows, they may be having some memory issue. But in Alzheimer is an abnormal, it's a disease. It's not a normal aging process because those plaques and all these things are deposited in higher quantity and then they make the neurons to die off.
Okay, so but if it is deposited in this small quantity, it does not result in these far-reaching symptoms, does it?
Yes, for as somebody, the older somebody grows, especially from 65 and above, there will still be some level of plaques and other things deposited, but not as much as that of Alzheimer. And usually, before Alzheimer starts, it takes about 10 to 20 years of continuous deposition of those plaques.
You see, that's why I was asking whether it's possible to actually predict before the time.
Yes, I'm saying that it's possible to predict based on many things. Family history of the individual.
Okay, let me just halt you there for a second. We're going on a short break.
Okay,
we'll take a really short break and come back for the discussion on Alzheimer's. Please stay with us.